Hi, everyone. Welcome to 7 Smart Questions. At Forté, we have such an amazing network of accomplished, talented, brilliant women and allies. I feel like I learn from them every day. And so why not share? I can't promise you that the questions are always going to be smart, but I can guarantee that you will be after hearing from our experts. Today, I'm excited to be joined by MBA alum Noor Aftab, who knows more about that AI than I can ever dream of. Noor, before I dive in, can you share a little bit about your background with everyone?
Hi, Amy. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to join you all on this call. I'm Noor Aftab, an AI strategist, IBM Champion, and the Focus Code of Conduct Working Group Chair. I have over 15 years of experience in tech. I have led large-scale data and cloud initiatives at Amazon Web Services, driving enterprise digital transformations across education, finance, and public sector industries. I am an IBM champion for 2025, which means I have early access to all of the AI tools and models before they're released to the public. And with that kind of knowledge comes great responsibility. So I bring them to developers, businesses, and communities, not just for awareness creation, but for driving adoption. And finally, as the chair of the Focus Code of Conduct Working Group, I ensure that AI is ethical, transparent, and accessible.
When you just said you had early access to AI tools, I've mastered maybe, no, I haven't even mastered. I use maybe one tool. So let me ask you, let me dive into my first question. What's one AI tool that you most believe in and why?
Ooh, that's going to be a tough one. Okay. And if I was to think about one tool, I would say it's a retrieval augmented generation framework. So think about AI that is static, and you have internet trivia, you can ask it questions, but now think about giving AI a brain. So it's your knowledge, it's your workflows, it's your company's information. So it just doesn't quote you random facts or Reddit threads. It is aware about what your question is. And when you say, what is our return to office policy? Then it really quotes answers from there.
Amazing. And what's that called again?
It's called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG for short.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so if someone uses AI for school or for work, will their teacher or boss know? And I guess does it matter?
Um, if your teacher and boss is able to find out, then you're not using AI right. If you're just using it as a copy paste tool, trust me, you will be caught. They will be able to find out. But if you're using it for workflow automation, that's what we always say as AI adoption, they should never know. It is something that's working in the background. It's making you and your teams faster and more efficient and should have no bottom line impact.
Interesting. Okay, great. So because you're an expert, I have to ask you, I know like what's the most helpful way I've ever used it, but what's the most helpful way you've ever used AI? And what does that say about you?
Wow, I didn't expect all of the hard questions.
Sorry.
No, but I think I have used it for workflow automation. Back in 2023, when we had access to APIs, you know, how you can use Google's API to find out weather without knowing the entire code behind it. One of the first things that I did was look at a problem that product managers at Amazon had. And they had these lots of tickets and workflow problems, and every
Yeah.
Monday they would be buried in tickets. And by the end of the week, many of them would be unresolved. So I designed a program called Ticket Copilot. and it just took your ticket ID and what your support ticket was all about, prioritized it, let you know the problem, put an estimated resolution date, you know. So, workflow automation is great for leaders and designing systems. It reduces your decision fatigue and frees up people to focus on what matters the most.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I've been hearing about something called shadow AI. I honestly don't know what it is, but I've heard that it's like it could be a cost for companies. So can you explain a little bit more for me?
Of course, Amy. So you are at Forte, and if Forte has its own large language model or a chatbot or a policy of what is right or wrong, and suppose that ChatGPT was not allowed at Forte, and someone in your staff, let's say a new hire, just started using that. So that's called shadow AI. And it's like you have an approved layer of AI, and then there's another stack that's working underneath, and it's costing companies more than you have budgeted for. And no, it's not okay just because everybody is experimenting.
Right.
It has some serious consequences. For instance, there was an Air Canada case where the bot said something and, it became a court matter. Or like at Disney, when somebody used a GitHub directory, which is, where you go to code and they just got it to be more efficient. But that cost the company thousands of dollars because there was a virus in the system. So we have to be aware of all of those things. But more importantly, it's about your customers' data, it's about your privacy, it's what is that you're putting in your data. No.
I'm so glad that you talked about privacy because that was one of my questions, which is you also mentioned ChatGPT, and of course I'm a big fan of ChatGPT. Um, but if I'm using public AI tools, am I exposing my company Forte's private or sensitive information?
Teams and leaders are driving AI adoption. So some 70% of CEOs today are leading the automation and AI function themselves. But what leaders are most concerned about is what you just said, privacy.
Yeah.
More leaves out of your company's doors via prompts than anything else. And there's no way to monitor it. So the best practice for anyone who's using it and wants to make it safe without going into a whole checklist is that any kind of documentation that you're putting into a publicly available LLM tool like Claude from Anthropic or Perplexity or ChatGPT, make sure private confidential information is not there. And I have like a kid test in there, and that is if you feel there is some information about your child, that you wouldn't put on a website, just don't put that information. That's my kid test. If
I,
I have 9-year-old twin daughters, I wouldn't put their photos out there. I wouldn't put their social securities, their phone number, email address, anything that's identifiable information. Sometimes in the tech world, we also refer it to as PII or publicly identifiable information.
yeah.
In healthcare, Amy, it's even harder because you have HIPAA compliance. If you move to Europe, there is GDPR compliance, and the list goes on. But basically, if it is identifiable information, just don't put it there. Make a hypothetical case and still ask your question.
Great intel. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now I have to think about like our own IP and whether or not I've put any of that at risk. I hope not. Okay. So I have started to use AI to help me make decisions. I just used it to help decide whether or not I should stay at a hotel given traffic patterns. Anyway, what is one decision that you shouldn't use AI to make, no matter how good it gets?
I can think of a couple of use cases, but personally, I would recommend against if you don't have a complete fine-tuned system, hiring is one area. Don't go into that.
Interesting.
And I did a study at PyData Global, and what we found was that models are only as good as the training data. So if LinkedIn has 70% male profiles for all job roles and categories, you will see the biases translate into the decisions that that data is trained on. So either find a way, like I said, all of it is not bad, of augmenting your data, like putting in more female information. For instance, when Apple Card first came out, in couples that had same credit profiles, women got lower credit limits versus their spouses, which didn't make sense, but the model was just acting on the training data information. So hiring is one. If you're in a critical industry like healthcare or financials, please triple check your data and don't just rely on the LLM information.
Wow. And I've heard that, right? That AI tools can be biased, and what a great, use example for that. Okay. So I know that, even at Forte, I'm using ChatGPT. Someone else might be using another tool. How can we as employees help a company move from kind of just reacting to AI trends to taking a more strategic, holistic approach to using AI?
Here's the litmus test. Are your projects AI aligned, or are they creating business impact? Are you building frameworks? Is it something repeatable? You know, I always say follow your curiosity, but work on a problem that you have at work. If it's repeatable, if it's happening often, if it's extremely complicated task, like for instance, when I mentioned Ticket Copilot, that was something a large amount of our product managers at Amazon, every week they were seeing that problem. And because of that efficiency, we were able to make them 75% more productive. And if you have metrics like this and you have frameworks and then you can follow through LLMs, then you know that you're not reacting, you are leading with AI.
Noor, I feel like in just 7 questions, I do feel smarter when it comes to AI. Thank you so much. Sorry, I'm going to throw in one bonus 8th question, but I know you're speaking at our upcoming MBA alumni conference in June in Denver. Anything that you want to tease for those who might be interested in attending?
If I were doing it today, I would say maybe um, folks would get insight into Menace, the new AI agent from China, or like in addition to all of these models, DeepSeek, which literally moved our stock markets and hit NVIDIA's valuation by 90%. But, they say in AI that there is a new model every Monday. There is a new framework every Tuesday and almost a new agent every Wednesday. The surface area is changing so fast.
So fast.
Whatever is the new technology, I promise there will be some preview of that. So you stay on top of the trends and you make signal out of the noise out there.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much for being the first guest on 7 Smart Questions. As I've said, I feel smarter. I hope our audience does too. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, Amy.
Thanks.